interview room. Muzzy checking in, the time's here. How you all doing? All right, let's begin. Let's have a chat about the fact that I want to interview the best fighters in the world, and that's that. Had a lot of guests from everywhere, all across the globe. Fighters tell me.
G'day everyone, how are we all? Mudzy here from Muay Thai Interviews again. My next guest, I've got an international guest today. He hails from Auckland, New Zealand. He's a multiple WMC NZ welterweight champ. He's a WKBF New Zealand welterweight, WKBF South Pacific and WKBF New Zealand super welterweight champion. He fights out of the Strikeforce Gym in Auckland. He's no stranger to fighting on King in the Ring, and he's currently training for his upcoming Lethwai World Title fight in Yangon, Myanmar. I'm joined by Kayne Insane Conlan. How are you, mate?
Hey, good. Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Thank you for giving me a bit of your time. It's much appreciated. So before we get into all the good stuff, King of the Ring just happened a few weeks ago. I know you were pretty gutted about not fighting on it. Why couldn't you fight? And what did you think about the overall tournament?
Yeah, King of the Ring's always really cool to watch, man. Like, the nature of an 8-man competition is always exciting. You know, with the quarterfinal draws, you know, that can always throw a spanner in the mix of, you know, in terms of who proceeds through to the semi-finals and finals. Yep. That's what's quite exciting about an 8-man tournament. Yeah, it was cool to watch, man. There's a lot of great talent in New Zealand, and I think what Jason and Anna Suddy are doing now with the weight cutting restrictions, so having pre-weight checks, so everyone's going to be roughly around the same size. There's not going to be any big guys doing big cuts, so that's also really cool. So everyone in that competition was nice and healthy. They were all roughly around the same weight, so it made for some really cool competition.
It did, mate. And were you surprised or impressed by anyone in particular?
Yeah, of course, the young boy Ashia Abadi, which took it out. He looked quite sharp. But I was also quite impressed with Tom Bergeron. I know personally that he had like a 6th or 7th month layoff and only had around 6 weeks to prepare for that straight off a 7-month layoff. So he did really well in that first fight with Jordan Symes, and then to get a second chance to fight in the semi-final after Jordan Symes broke his hand to take on Ashia Abadi after he had a first-round stoppage, and then taking the distance and really give him a good go. I was actually quite impressed with that. So yeah, he did quite well. But yeah, the young boy was sharp, man. Like, yeah, he deserved to win that night.
Yeah, it was a good fight, and if I'm being honest, I liked what was that guy? Josh, was it? I liked him as no. Sorry, who was the guy you just said? What was his name? Sorry,
Tom Bergeron.
Tom Bergeron. Yeah, I liked him only because I'm a Muay Thai purist at heart, and I could tell by looking at him, his style's more Muay Thai than kickboxing. So that's always good.
And I'm in total agreement with you, man. Like, I'm more of I'm geared towards Muay Thai as well, and you know, his style shutdown, you know, was working quite well against a kickboxer, and that kickboxing style, and he utilized it really well. And yeah, like I said, coming off a 7th month layoff and competing at that level again, I thought that was quite impressive.
Yeah, definitely. So I thought I'd ask, how did you get into Muay Thai or K1?
My uncle was actually one of the main MCs back in what you could call like the golden era of New Zealand kickboxing and Muay Thai. Like, he was the MC for all the shows, and so as a child he would take me along and sit me ringside, and I'll be the bellboy, and kind of like, that was roughly when I was like 5 years old, 4 years old. So I'd kind of be going to the fight since I was really young, and you know, kind of getting quite involved with it because he'd always take me to the shows. And one day I was about 11 years old, 12 years old, my first or second year of intermediate. He said, man, you should come down and give it a crack. And so my first gym I actually trained at was ETK, Jason Suddy's gym. That's when it was back in Newmarket. Mm-hmm. And yeah, on my very first session, there was a trainer there called Roger Earp, and he's one of their head trainers. He's been in the ETK family for years and years and years. And he asked me, is this your first time training? And I said, yeah, man. He goes, well, look, you're a natural, and I'll give you these pair of gloves, but you have to promise me you're going to come to training every single night from now on. And if you do, you can have these gloves to keep. I'm going to personally train you. So that was really cool. And that was my first session. And then the rest is history, man. I just kept training. I trained every night. I trained at ETK for 2 years, and they ended up moving quite far away from where I lived. So that's when I made the transition to Strikeforce.
Sounds like a cool story, mate. And as you said, the rest is it's all history.
Yeah, man, I just fell in love with the sport straight away. Yeah, like I picked it up very quickly. Yeah.
So you, I think I know the answer to this question, but are you a Muay Thai purist at heart, or do you prefer the kickboxing?
Yeah, like we discussed before, yeah, Muay Thai is what I'm more geared towards. Like, it suits my style better.
Yeah.
I love using elbows. It's unfortunately we don't get enough Muay Thai in New Zealand. Like a lot of people just don't want to fight with elbows for whatever reason. So it's quite hard to get the level of Muay Thai in New Zealand. Really needs to pick up.
Yeah.
A lot of our experience we're getting overseas. But then again, it's just hard getting that chance to get overseas. So yeah, a lot of the time it's kickboxing in New Zealand or modified Muay Thai. So
yeah, and I've also noticed that a lot of people in New Zealand, they don't like the clinching aspect of it, or they just don't do it.
Yeah, well, I think it's just there's not enough Muay Thai in New Zealand. Like people don't want to fight real Muay Thai. Like I said, there's a lot of kickboxing, a lot of modified Muay Thai. Whether the fans like that style better because it's a bit more fast paced. They don't have to. If you're not like a true martial artist and appreciate the technical kind of side of things that go into clinch work, a lot of people just like watching a fast-paced kickboxing match, which is a kind of what the Western palate is. They like seeing blood, they like seeing lots of fighting.
It is, but it also makes for good, interesting matchups. Because I actually about a month or just before King of the Ring, I interviewed Sam Hill, and I actually brought you up in the interview because you guys have fought each other 3 times. You've both won one apiece. For him in kickboxing, you in Muay Thai, and then he's also drawn. So I also think with that kickboxing Muay Thai, it also makes for interesting matchups because people are good at what they're good at, and then they transition, and they're also learning and developing and changing as well.
Yeah, totally, man. I think it's really important to have good fundamentals of both, as they both come in handy, and you can really just develop your own style, and find out if you're better at kickboxing or better at Muay Thai and things like that, for sure.
Yeah, mate. And you've been around for a while now, and I think it's fair to say that you're at the top of your game. Fighting, it's not an easy sport. If it was, everyone would be doing it. What are some of the obstacles or struggles you've faced and overcome to get to where you are today?
Oh man, there's a mountain of obstacles that every fighter has to overcome just to get in the ring. But man, to be honest, man, and saying I'm actually not top of my game yet. Like I've had a few really bad injuries, which set me back, and honestly, just in the last year or two, I feel like I'm actually really coming into my own again. And I've put together some really nice wins recently, and I feel like the best is still yet to come. So yeah, I mean, in the next year or two, I'm hoping, to really start peaking. I've had some really cool fights. So yeah, the top of my game, I haven't quite reached it yet, but we're getting there.
And you've won a fair few titles and achieved a lot of accomplishments so far in your career. What have been some of the highlights for you so far?
Yeah, man, winning titles is fun. Getting that gold strap is always quite nice. But honestly, the highlight of my career so far would probably be fighting Lethwai in Japan. Japan is like one of the places that's home to martial arts. There's like some really cool martial arts that originated from Japan. Karate and other martial arts. So fighting there in a place where the people of Japan really love martial arts, that was something special for me. The place I fought, Karaku Hall, some other great Kiwis like Ray Sefo, Mark Hunt, a couple of guys have fought there. So that was quite cool for me to walk down those hallways and see their, framed pictures up on the hall. It was almost like a Hall of Fame type thing. Lots of famous fighters that have fought there.
Yeah.
So that was quite cool for me. It gave me goosebumps walking down there, knowing that I'd be fighting that night. So that was quite cool.
Yeah, awesome, mate. Awesome. Now, the thing I want to have a little chat with you here is a while ago, you fought Singh Payak on a promotion in New Zealand, and to cut a long story short, the promoter left the country without paying you, and you were left to chase up the money. While it all ended up sweet and you got paid, but since then, has that sort of made you change the way you approach a fight from a financial or business point of view?
Yeah, man, that was a bit of a shame that, because myself and the promoter, which I was fighting for, we had quite a good relationship previous to that. And generally my coach does all the financial negotiations with fight pay and my purse and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But I personally, I quite like networking and talking to promoters and kind of doing all that stuff myself as well. So I kind of actually dealt with that one personally. Aaron, my coach, didn't have too much to do with it. I felt like I had a good enough relationship with the guy that, he would honor his agreement, but I'm not actually too sure what went down or the reasons he couldn't pay me. But yeah, he left the country and he said he just went on a holiday, and he stopped texting me back and stopped messaging me, and I took to social media and I didn't actually name and shame him.
Yeah.
Because, I wanted to give him a fair chance just in case it was some sort of just misunderstanding or whatever. But yeah, around like 4 weeks later, he messaged me and he's like, "Oh, I've got the money for you," and he invited me out to lunch and bought me a coffee and kind of apologized and gave me the cash. So I'm not too sure what went down, but he made it right. And from then on, I just say talk to my coach now, and let him deal with all the financial kind of negotiations with fight money and stuff, just so I don't have anything to do with it.
Yeah. But it's funny that you say that with the social networking and everything, because it's how a lot of fights and stuff are done these days. Like a lot of fighters, like so many times you'll see a promoter say, "Oh, I'm chasing a 60 to 62 kilo fighter between this many fights and this many fights," and then like fighters themselves will just like go, "Yep, I want to fight, I want to fight, I want to fight." So it's sort of with the social media, it's really good, but then it's also because, like you said, like you did get it dealt with through your trainer or your manager, but a lot of fighters are just like trying to get fights themselves these days. Yeah,
and it was all experience, it made me a bit more wary, when I'm talking to promoters and stuff like that, and keeping my trainer more on the loop, which is experience on my part, which I've kind of like learned now. But I think from approaching a fight in the future from a business or financial point of view, I think New Zealand is far too small for anyone to rip anyone off. It's not going to do anything for them. Like, especially, like, I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet, but with me especially, like, I'm pretty well known in like New Zealand.
Yeah.
Anyone were to rip me off, like a lot of trainers and stuff jumped on board and were like, they knew who the promoter was, so they all messaged them, and and they're all well-respected trainers and coaches in their own right. So I think it's hard to get ripped off in New Zealand. Like, if you do, it's not going to be good for you. But definitely it was a good learning curve and some good experience if I am going to be dealing with overseas promoters and stuff like that in the future, for sure.
Yeah, it's a tight-knit community that you guys have over there.
It is, yeah, it is, yeah.
And although combat sports is becoming more and more popular in New Zealand, it still lacks the financial backing for a lot of fighters who are left to fund their own training, find sponsors, and to get fights, etc., like we just touched on. What are some things that you believe could be implemented to help take off some of the financial pressures for fighters, such as yourselves, and to gain more exposure?
Oh, yeah. It's a hard one, man, because it's like, take boxing for example. It's called the gentleman's sport, and it's got quite a lot of financial backing, and it's hard for me to to kind of see why the same or similar types of sponsorship or financial backing isn't there for Muay Thai or kickboxing. Like, I know that our sport isn't truly recognized by Sport New Zealand or the government, just because of the nature of it. So we're not on their agenda.
Yeah.
And if we can serve their agenda, you know, we're not going to get the financial backing, you know. But in order to kind of, what am I trying to say? Yeah, I'd love to see some more big brands or some bigger organizations really get invested in the sport to kind of build the infrastructure up to show that it is a professional sport.
Yeah.
And you know, we can look good and look professional and you know, do New Zealand proud with our sport, just like any other sport, you know. I'd love for us to finally be on their agenda, you know. Yeah, I'd love to see more small businesses and larger ones, you know, get involved in with athletes to help the infrastructure, you know. To get big, we have to build it from the ground up, and you know, once we start getting more athletes on the world stage, I think it could be quite beneficial for you know, for businesses and organizations and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think you're right there with big sponsors and stuff, because I mean, people like you and myself who follow the New Zealand Muay Thai, or take from my example the Australian Muay Thai scene, people who follow the scene, they know who the fighters are, but people who don't follow it wouldn't have a clue. Whereas, you know, you got boxing, people who don't follow boxing, but they'll know who Joseph Parker is, for example, in New Zealand, or in Australia, yeah, Anthony Mundine or Jeff Horn, because they've got all the big media outlets and all the big sponsors to get their names out there. So unless you're in that circle, it's hard to get random people to recognise you or your sport or what you do.
Yeah, and I think it's still, there's that stigma around Muay Thai and kickboxing. Like, it's still kind of viewed as quite brutish, and like you know, like you hear like them talking about it on the radio, like with sometimes mixed martial arts, and it's still one that they just call it brutal and barbaric and like modern day gladiators and this and that. But we're Muay Thai kickboxers, mixed martial artists and kickboxers, you know, we embody like a lot of the principles that are just in martial arts that don't involve as much contact, you know. We still embody those same principles, discipline, you know, like dedication that far exceed, you know, a lot of sports. We're underpaid athletes, you know, like we're overworked, but, you know, so just that in itself is just, I don't know why that message isn't getting through and why people don't appreciate that more. They just, like, media just chooses to, you know, dissect or pick out the bad parts. Someone gets a brain injury or someone, you know, like, so there's still a bit of stigma there that I don't think they want to publicize, you know, like in media, and that's stopping us. That's like the next step that we need to get that exposure, and we're not there yet.
yeah, definitely, mate, definitely. And I know you said that fighting in Japan was one of the best achievements or accomplishments of your career so far. But I'd like to ask what the actual experience fighting Lethwai was like, and how does Lethwai compare to any Muay Thai or kickboxing fight you've ever had?
Yeah, it's actually totally different, man. I thought I didn't really know what to expect. Fighting with no gloves, you know, I didn't. But the atmosphere, man, like I was saying, in Japan itself, like the atmosphere was electric, and Lethwai has all its own history, like its own deal going on, and it is so much different than fighting kickboxing and Muay Thai. Like the buzz, of fighting in Japan alone, but then fighting with no gloves, it's about as raw as it gets. And it's a different feeling, man. You're really fighting in there. Like, it's quite hard to explain. You can headbutt, you can only win by knockout. There's no point system. So it's very, very different. Like when you're in there, you're a lot more aware. It's very hard to explain. You're aware that you're in a fight. You know, like it's very It's very raw. Yeah, it's very hard to explain. Like unless you actually do it, it's very hard to explain. But
Sort of like survival of the fittest, kill or be killed.
that's it, man. And these Myanmar boys, they've been fighting Lethwai since they're children, you know. So they truly know no fear, you know. And but at the same time, I love it because at the end of the fight, you know, you shake hands, and there's still that component of just respect, honor, and dignity there. So, but when you're in there, man, yeah, they want to kill you. You know, like it's because of the different rule set as well. It's a lot more incentive to win by well, you can only win by stoppage, so there's a lot more incentive there as well to stop your opponent. And you can't point fight because then you don't win, you know. So it almost forces a lot more engagement, a lot more risk as well. So yeah, it's a very it's a very cool feeling.
And mate, shortly you will be heading over to Myanmar, the capital of Lithuania, or Yangon, to fight for a Lethwai World Title, which will be on August the 18th. How did that opportunity arise?
Yeah, so there's a fighter in New Zealand called Alexis Serapisos. He's pound for pound probably the best in New Zealand at his weight. But you know, I think I don't know anyone that would kind of argue that point. He fought for a Lethwai World Title. He got the opportunity to fight for a Lethwai World Title a couple of years ago, and he got asked again to go over, but he had obviously some big things planned, like he's in one championship now, and he couldn't take the fight. Cut a long story short, the guy was like, could you recommend anyone that would be keen to fight in Lethwai? And he just kind of was like, I know this guy. And you know, put my name forward, and I got offered a fight in Japan, in Tokyo, and I took it. I did really well. That was against a golden belt champion Lethwai fighter. I did really well against him and put a big beating on him. So they wanted me back. I fought again in Japan Lethwai at the start of the year, and I did really well in that one. Both draws, but both times like I put a beating on the guys really badly, and so which put me, you know, kind of a good line for a title shot, you know. So yeah, they've asked me back to fight Lethwai champion in August.
Yeah, awesome, mate. So how's the training been going, and have you done anything different to the way you usually train?
In terms of my general approach, not really. Like I'm still training really hard. Like my fitness is always very good going into a fight. Like I don't take any shortcuts when it comes to my cardio. Like it's all hard work. But in saying that, yeah, I have changed my training a little bit. I've slowed down my pace. My footwork a little bit, you know, because I'm quite used to point fighting and, you know, like working from the outside and working my range. But in Lethwai, where there's no point system, you know, like you have to change a little bit. So I've slowed it down a little bit just so I can put myself in range for some more committed shots and more power shots. I've also been working in combinations with headbutts. It's a really effective weapon, which I don't think the Myanmar fighters expect from foreigners too much, you know. You know, we never use headbutts, so the foreigners generally try and stay away from them. But I've been working quite a lot of headbutts. It's a really good weapon. I cut my last opponent in Lethwai Open with a headbutt, so I found them to be quite useful. So I've added those into my training, and just slowed my technique down a little bit. Just geared towards more power shots and counter punching rather than point fighting, because you can't win on points.
Yeah. Hey, this may sound like a dumb question, but do you train without boxing gloves?
No, I still train with gloves. But there are times where I'll be hitting the bag where I'll take my gloves off and just and do some repetition, just some conditioning of my knuckles and wrists.
Yeah.
Because like seriously, man, like the slowest thing walking away from a Lethwai fight is my hands. You know, they swell up and they go black and blue for about 4 or 5 days. It's really, really tough on the knuckles and in your hands. Like I fractured my 5th metacarpals in both my hands in the first Lethwai fight. just small fractures, but yeah, it's very, very hard on the hand. So I've started kind of just taking my gloves off after training and maybe just hitting the bag, not too hard, but just kind of repetition and getting some volume up just without gloves on, just to try and break down some tissue and some of those nerves and rebuild it.
So, mate, what can the people expect from you, and how can they tune in to support you?
They can expect a good fight from me on this one. Training's been going well. Like I said, I've been adding a few different things in the training and changing it up. So, and having a bit of experience in Lethwai now, I've got a kind of clear idea in my head of how I want the fight to go in terms of getting a stoppage. So they can expect a stoppage in this next one. You know, that's what I need to do to get the world title. If they want to follow me, I'm going to try and Facebook Live this one. Insane Kayne Conlan is my Facebook page, and also Insane Kayne on Instagram is my social media, so they can follow me on there. And yeah, I'll be looking to put a live stream up for this next world title fight.
Awesome, mate. And last but not least, anyone you wish to thank or want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, for sure, man. Like we just talked about previously, it's really hard to get sponsors in the sport, man, and people that genuinely just want to help you out to further your career. So I'd like to give a shout out to the People's Gym. That's my strength and conditioning gym. Like, they've backed me since day one, man. Like, win or lose, they're always happy to support and help me out. My strength and conditioning coach and nutrition coach, Bergeron Abelardo. He's been amazing in helping the weight cuts easy and helping me perform optimally throughout my training camps whilst losing weight. That guy's amazing. Strikeforce Gym, all the people that train there, my coach Aaron Boys. Yeah, man, I think that just about. Illicit Leaf as well. Illicit Leaf is a new sponsor that's just jumped on board. They've been supplying me with non-psychoactive CBD products, so that's been helping with relaxation and the help with inflammation and stuff like that and recovery. So they've been awesome as well. Yeah, man, I think that's about it.
Awesome, mate. Well, thank you very much for your time, and I wish you the best of luck on your world title fight. And if you do live stream it, I'll certainly be tuning in to watch, mate. So best of luck.
Awesome, mate. Thank you.
Infamous and legendary, that to me is glorious. Come kick it, still talk some shit with me. I'll ask so you can answer and explain to me the history. I had to throw a vicious knee. I got a passion for the art of 8 limbs. I'm just asking from the heart. So as I conclude this interview, thanks so much for sitting through. Love to all the fighters and the folks that listen. This for you.